To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In reviewing the agenda, Mr. Ramey is excused.
I don't have anything to add to the agenda. I have a few pieces that we're talking about later this evening. I have a few pieces under communications received and sent, and we do have a non-public session this evening. It will be regarding the Fremont Commission agreement and conversation with legal counsel. So we'll have a non-public session.
A motion for the minutes of January 7th.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of January 7th, public hearing.
Is there a second? And are there any corrections or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the minutes? Was that public annual? Did you say? The vote. Thank you, that accepted and unanimous. The register is in the manifest or coming around. Administrative reports, Judge Blake.
Thank you. Tonight we have two administrative reports. First up will be the technology plan. Ask Mr. Ficker to lead that discussion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Blake.
Just for the record, the tech plan is in the folder, and Scott, if you want to bring that up, it should be behind that. Folks have questions as we're going through. Yeah.
We are here to present the technology plan for 2015 to 2018 on behalf of the Tech Committee. And I'd like to just preface that with a couple of statements. There's questions regarding any budgetary or monetary figures in here or anything like that. That is just required by the state for their outline. We're in no way held responsible if we okay this tech plan for the budgetary figures that are in it going forward as a projection. It doesn't. We're not bound by that in any manner. And in fact, just recently, a month ago, the primary reason why we do this outline with the tech plan is to be eligible for E-rate funding. But the recent E-rate rules have changed within the last month, and now we're actually not required to have a tech plan. So there are some things that maybe the next time when we do one, we'll be able to leave out, sort of things that are required by the state but not necessarily needed. The first thing I'd like to say is putting together a 3-year tech plan is sort of like putting together a 5-year tech budget. There's a lot of variables in technology itself as we move year to year, and also the variables in funding that we have from year to year. We don't really know, we can't plan ahead on exactly what we're going to have for dollars, so we can't say we're going to go out and buy this or we're going to go out and buy that. So it's an educated guess. It's a place where we want to be, and it's an outline of what something to look at to drive us through the next 3 years. And a lot of the goals in it will be ongoing goals. This is actually an updated tech plan from the previous one, and some of the goals are almost the same, and they will be the same in the next tech plan as we just try to get better or do more of the same thing. Some of the things that changed. As I went back through the old tech plan, we pretty much addressed most goals in that tech plan. and bypassed, exceeded most of them. I'll just go through some of the highlights and accomplishments that we did get through, and then we'd be glad to take any questions or statements you have on the plan to move forward. The first thing I'd like to highlight is we were the first district in New Hampshire to have a private cloud. By 2 years, we were. We did a wireless install in the district at a very reduced cost to the district. We have addressed power needs and space needs in both elementaries with thin client PCs that have taken the place of large desktops, flat panel monitors instead of the CRTs. Our disk storage space has increased, as would be obvious with all the people now saving files and everything. But we've actually done it at a cost savings because in today's world, one of the biggest marketing things is disk arrays. They can run anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000, and we actually build our own for about $2,000. We buy the backplane and we buy the hard drives, and we build our own, so that saves costs for the district. We've done a complete website upgrade and also moved to a hosted site, which would enable us bandwidth-wise to be able to have more traffic. And it also helps us with the complexity of websites nowadays. We also have a vendor that's running it for us. Something that we have done that a lot of districts have gotten caught in just recently with the smarter balanced testers, we have upgraded our bandwidth. We looked ahead a little bit, and we've upgraded our bandwidth gradually throughout the years to make it so it wasn't such a big budgetary hit. And we are now at a very comfortable level as far as being able to handle smarter balanced testing and online testing. A lot of districts, from what I've heard online, are now trying to put in a big dollar amount to get their bandwidth up to acceptable rates for the smarter balanced testing, and due to default budgets are unable to do it. We actually upgraded ours on a yearly basis, a little at a time, and so now we're in a very comfortable spot. We've done one of the goals, we've upgraded. We've put more devices in the hands of kids. We have roughly 380 iPads now, over 1,000 PCs, another couple hundred thin clients. So we've upgraded the number of cows within all the schools, and so we're putting more devices in the hands of kids. We've also implemented a disaster recovery plan. Should a disaster happen to the one node of the district or whatever, we have a plan to move data and be able to access data and get backups when we need it. We've added the Adobe suite to our licensing plan, which saved us around $8,000 on the budget. And also, one of the biggest things is we actually put technology in the classroom, every classroom. We have a standard configuration for technology, which we didn't 3 years ago. We have a projection device with electronic whiteboard, a document camera, and a Mimeo slate, and every staff member has a laptop. So that was something that we implemented within that window. We see from the surveys that we're taking that there is an increase in staff usage and comfortability with technology. We implemented our own survey a couple of years ago, so we take the results from teachers, and we've noticed an increase in the usage. And also, what we did with the wireless was we broke it out. We have 2 VLANs, each one for staff, one for students. And so students now are able to get on wireless within the schools, all the schools. And what we've actually adapted to is we now have small pockets of BYOD, which is bring your own device. We haven't taken that on. We haven't made a decision as to whether we're going to try for a one-to-one initiative or BYOD. Given the budget status, we have set up the network and the wireless to be, it can easily be changed over, but we set up for BYOD because it's a big financial cost to the district to go to a one-to-one. So where we had to make a choice, when we set up the configuration, we set it up for bring your own device. It can easily be changed, and policies can be changed, but we use that as a default so that kids can now come in, and teachers, when they are at the comfort level, they can use devices within the classroom to get to Word or whatever they need to do. And we also have a new Sophos firewall that we installed that gives us the flexibility to deal with those mobile devices. We didn't have that flexibility prior, and now we can filter them, we can track them, and we can actually enable them and disable them through the new firewall we have. That's quite a list that we went through on the old plan. The new plan, I would just emphasize, say that it is a plan, it's an outline, it has to be fluid, knowing technology and budgets and things like that. But I think we have a good plan to take us forward. And now, I was supposed to do this first. I was supposed to introduce who I was with. I'm not good at that. You can ask my wife. She does that. This is Amy McDonald, a tech integrator, and Scott Grayson, my network manager. And we would all be glad to answer any questions that you have or any statements.
Just, you mentioned the survey that our staff takes, and just in anticipation of a question that will likely come up. Years ago, many years ago now, we used to have the state used to do a low tide survey.
Yep.
They don't do that anymore, correct? Okay, so we're left to our own devices to figure out technology usage on our own. And so we've developed and give a survey to our staff
Yep.
yearly, every couple of years? How often does that?
Go ahead.
Okay. So for 2 years now, so in the spring of 13 and then again last year, spring of 14, we distributed our own survey to Google. And the results were given directly to us. Prior to that, the LODI was in 2011. That was the last year for the LODI. And then in 2012, the state required one. But the state no longer requires one. So we decided to keep up the trend and to track ourselves. So for 2 years now, we've done our own. And we submitted the last month of school before people check out.
On the surveys, first of all, thank you very much. That was so impressive. I couldn't keep up with everything that you've done. It's amazing. It really is, and how on top and ahead of everything you've been with the limited resources that you've been given. So kudos, very well done. The surveys, they're not anonymous.
That's something that we've sort of struggled with. The end of the year checkout procedure for teachers usually comes with a checklist of what they have to do. They have to return, various equipment, and the LODI was always required and was tracked by school, percentage of teachers responding. It's very difficult to do that and to get accurate and honest answers. So what we struggled with was, as a Google Doc or a Google survey, it could be that we check that the person has logged in to prove that they have done it. However, that then takes away some of the anonymity to figure out who it was. So we did go back and forth about whether to make it anonymous or whether to require a login. I personally would love to have it be required as part of that checkout procedure. You have to have that checked off, but if we want to get accurate and honest results, then it becomes a little bit trickier. So to answer your question, it is currently it's anonymous.
So how do you plan to educate if you don't know what they need?
Basically, the questions themselves are designed to see, I like to think that I was rather creative in writing them, and they're designed, I've asked things in a multitude of ways. So I've asked whether or not they're using certain equipment, but then I've asked about certain practices in the classroom and whether or not they do them, and I know that they require certain equipment. So there's certain ways of wording the questions, and I basically take the average of what people are reporting. It's also possible to be able to see, one of the questions is what school you're from, so I am able to break it down by school. That's a huge help.
Is there an opportunity for them to request additional training?
Yes,
And then
always. Yep.
And when is that normally done? Do you do it group-wise, one-on-one?
That depends, and that's something that I can't really explain in terms of the summer. There's summer professional development, but that again depends on budgetary constraints. Often it's an email to me. I will also do after-school trainings, lunchtime, prep time training, whatever people are more likely to attend.
And one more, I'll put it on the spot.
It's okay.
Are there still those who refuse
Yes. Very few, and decreasing. But yes.
Thank you.
Just one of the key reasons that this particular position, Amy's position, was designed to get into the classrooms with teachers and to almost work one-on-one with the teachers as we bring technology in. And it's important for the teacher to feel comfortable. Part of the interview process was somebody that teachers would feel comfortable with inviting to the classroom, because you really can't force your way into a teacher's classroom and say, now I'm going to train you. You almost have to be asked and have that teacher accept you in. So the personality, knowing the person that was in that position and being comfortable with them was actually a part of the process when I was interviewing for it, because I wanted that person that was going to be asked to come into people's classrooms, because it's not one of those positions you can force in. And it seems to have worked out good. It's just tough to get to that many staff members with one person.
And it's not, we have other technology folks that are in buildings, technology teachers, as well as other teachers who are, I'll say, high-end users of technology. And so there's a lot of sharing that goes on. You know, I'm going to do a particular lesson utilizing a particular piece of technology, and, you know, come on in and see it if it's during your prep, or you know, after school I'll be in my classroom and I can show you this. So there's a lot of professional development that goes on between and amongst the teachers that isn't necessarily district directed.
Hi, Corey Mason. So thank you very much. I understand the intensity that goes behind a technology plan, and more importantly, the challenges that you have on a daily basis. I'm on the other side of the fence today, unfortunately, having asked a couple questions, and I apologize for that. I question if the technology plan currently provides an adequate enough information for a citizen on voting day to support the need for additional funding. We have an item on the warrant for you guys to potentially see more money. I also question if the technology plan in its current format has success in answering what does the objective really mean, and what is the expectancy of that objective. More importantly, where are the benchmarks? That's a challenge I have when reading the technology plan, and to some others that I'm familiar with. Scott, can I ask you a favor?
Sure.
If you could scroll up, for example, to, or maybe just search for budget ongoing for cost. And I'm just looking like to bring something, I guess, here is something I.
You know what, are you on a particular page that you can scroll up?
No, I'm just reading from my.
Sorry, what was the?
Yeah, budget ongoing for cost of internet. It's going to be underneath your connectivity, I presume. It's underneath connectivity, yeah, current goal objectives. So, right now you have, you know, it says.
Right one?
Yeah, that's right, thank you, sir. Actually, no, it's not.
All right.
Budget ongoing for cost of internet and intra.
I think it was it budget ongoing or budget?
Ongoing.
Oh, budget
Ongoing. All one word, ongoing. Again, should be underneath this section.
I think I know what you're talking about, so go ahead, I'm glad.
Yeah, so I mean, it's okay, but others around here may want to look at what I'm talking about. So it's actually on page 12.
All right.
Yeah, thanks. So something like this here is a challenge, right? So, I'll wait till you cut. Right there. Budget, you know, so again, we're in the connectivity section right now. Where I'm having a question here is like, you know, budget ongoing for costs of internet and intra-school connectivity, search for cost-effective methods. The word search to me is a challenge. Maintain and bound district bandwidth allowing a district private cloud environment. Would it not behoove us as a citizen who doesn't really know what this means, or they do know a lot of the buzzwords now because we've become destigmatized and back we don't longer have to put HTTP in front of everything, or www. You know, why wouldn't we declare, or should we declare, you know, like the district provides connectivity to the internet and network for all computers in classrooms? Or why not say something like district provides network bandwidth of at least a number and to each classroom? Or at peak bandwidth usage, like max usage, we're going to be at this megabit. So essentially setting benchmarks to strive for, because right now I'm reading non-benchmark material. I'm not reading for, we're looking for this. We're looking to accomplish that. And me, it's just like words. It's not with anecdotal data behind it. So that's a challenge as a voter to say, well, what do they want? What do they need? What does the teaching and learning environment expect? And that's where I'm concerned here, is that the technology plan doesn't necessarily outline, you know, what the effective objective use, effective expectancy, and effective benchmarking. I'll stop for a second. We'll stop on that one. And another one might be like, you guys. What's the expected staff members to pupil ratio? What's the expected staff members to computer ratio as you bring a BYOD? If we hit this threshold, you know, it couldn't just be easily as something saying in a tech plan like, district resolves technical problems within X amount of hours. District provides clear information about how to access technical support. District provides 1 FTE for every computer. You know, computer being computers really. So I'm just concerned I don't read this stuff here. And to adopt and to be a voting citizen on something that I'm not seeing, like, what am I getting for this? And why do I want to vote yes for this? I don't know if we're really answering those questions for the taxpayer. Do you know what I mean?
I can answer most of it in the fact that when I do bring those numbers for budgetary requests, in other words, when I request a position, I will use a PC count per full-time employee as a general, you know, what we have and what we need. I brought that to the board before when the budget discussions have come up. Now this is already a 35-page document.
You can have 10.
Yeah.
Many districts do.
You probably could. You probably could. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm the perfect technology plan writer, but I will tell you that the first one I did in this format was actually put on the state website as an example. So if I left it as is, because the state was happy with it, and you know, I don't believe it wasn't. In other words, when I generated it, it wasn't for budgeting, and it wasn't to be used for that. It was more to give us an outline and also to make us eligible for E-rate to keep it up. Those were the generating factors for it. Now, I could get more specific, but my sense is that may turn people the other way. We were trying to be general with this. Budget for ongoing cost of internet is to just make sure that we are asking for the dollar figure to keep us running. That, you know, that's what that sentence means to me. We could budget for 1,000 PCs, but the 1,000 PCs does come up. The inventory is available. It does come up in discussions of budgets and things like that. So the numbers do come up. They could be put there, and that's fine. I tried to trim it as much as I could to that effect. Now, a good piece of the size of it probably is due to the outline that the state required in order to pass it and get it state approved, with all of the little pages and things that come at the end. Now, it definitely could be trimmed down, there's no doubt, but until a month ago, it was required by the state that it had certain things.
A state-approved budget plan isn't necessarily a SAU's budget. A state-approved technology plan isn't necessarily your budget, your technology plan, right? It's satisfying those goals because it's almost like filling out a grant. You have to satisfy how many pages of information. When they really only want one paragraph, what are you going to do differently than the next district? Because they already can get those numbers from some department of ed. Anyway, I mean, metrics are important though, aren't they? And because aren't metrics what we run in a technology world off of? By how many students are going to be using a computer? How many computers we're going to have? And what is it going to cost to run that? And if you have a sound technology plan that says, we expect this, we're going to attain this by then, and you're using that as a guiding principle. I'll go back to the technology literacy, because I had a bunch of questions about that. Like, you know, shouldn't there be something like nearly X% of academic teachers have access to computers? nearly X% of teachers use some form of technology. And you're just like chipping away, so then you can come back to us and say, we've hit this benchmark. Here's what we did, and here's how it's gonna impact that, because that's what the taxpayer wants to know. If you're gonna go out, and maybe I'm mistaken here, but if someone's gonna ask for more, I wanna know what you're doing with it, and I wanna know what you're trying to strive for. And right now, I don't see, like, with tech literacy, you know, like, number of X students use some form of technology every day. Number of X teachers use technology daily to improve teaching and learning. You know, those type of things, which with your collaboration with your curriculum teams, and because you had such a big board on the tech plan, I just would expect those things to be there. I just caution, I'm concerned that there's not enough meat and potatoes for someone to support that. I mean, it's nothing, it's just, yeah.
I understand where you're coming from, and we could certainly, we can put that in. I mean, I have no problem with doing that. I don't know where we would get some of the numbers, and my fear has always been within this community, having been here such a long time, was the technology budget used to always take the hit. And that was mainly because of people that didn't feel it was needed. So I didn't boister it up with numbers and throw more numbers and those type of things at them, rather than trying to simplify it and get them to understand it, rather than push them away.
But maybe it's the way you're selling it now. The lady behind you is actually the person you need on your side. And I've said the word a couple times now, a couple of words, teaching and learning. The community wants to hear the impact of the classroom. The community wants to see, I'm getting X amount of dollars worth of my students' education. This amount of money is coming back. You know, curriculum should be driving technology now. It's no longer administration, overhead of management of computers and those archaic CRTs. We don't have that anymore.
Oh, it absolutely is driving.
So that's
Curriculum is driving technology. We're only a support function within the district.
You're not partly actually the backbone, but that's, but yeah.
Well, it depends on what side you look at it. If you look at it from a tech person, yes, we probably are, but we are driven, and Dr. Blake has made it clear that curriculum is driving technology. We're a support function, and I relay what is asked for from the principals. I'm just, you could call me the middleman. I mean, when we request cows or PCs or iPads, it's not coming from Bob Ficker. We have to support them, and we have to make sure that the money comes in my budget in order for software or things like that. But those are requests through A-Team from principals that are saying, I need this many PCs in my classroom to do this.
But so, if I was a community member and I didn't think there was enough computers in the classroom, if I was a community member and I didn't think there was enough technology use through computers and, you know, just from, you know, lack of a better term, the 21st century classroom, because it's so past that, we're now 2000 something. Wouldn't it just be like, oh, well, you know, here's the impact. If you plan on bringing this in and we plan on getting you here, here's what's going to be needed. It's really just like saying, if we hit this benchmark and we have this type of integration of technology, we're going to require this amount of computers and with this amount of throughput and this amount of staff. It's pretty elementary. And I'm just right now like concerned, I don't see that, because if I want to come in and say, I'm going to give you 600 iPads as a, you know, somehow, some way I get 685, I have a school district that I'm working with that just gets 685 for free. I'm like, whoa. I know back in the day, I would be shaking my boots because my network wouldn't be able to handle that. And that's where like I would be like, oh, how are we going to budget for this? How is this going to impact my staffing? And that's where like it just needs to be like, I don't see this stuff here. In the event if, in, you know, it's about if and and, if and then. And that's why I keep coming back to it. I'm just struggling on the adoption of the model that I currently see in front of me. Not what you guys do, because I think what you do is great, and what you have for resources is amazing, what you're doing. But as a community member voting on something, I think this adoption of this model is a little challenging. It's not enough benchmarking, not enough information for me to support it. I'm concerned that others might feel the same way. So talking, I took a tie off, and I feel bad.
I think what I'm hearing is I think Corey is definitely team Bob Ficker.
Yeah.
But I think he wants I think he's looking for more specific goals that are more understandable to the public. So that money, that warrant article, that says, if we have this, money at the end of the year, that, let's give a reason for that voter to check off, yes, that they wanna give you that $100,000. But we need to sell it to them. I think that's kind of what you're.
Yeah, apparently I don't speak as elegant.
I understand completely. There are numbers of people, and then there are people that, may get bogged down in something like that too. So within a community, nobody's ever the same. And I understand that people, in order to get budget dollars, some people want to see the numbers, what's it gonna get us, what it's gonna get us. I have always attacked that myself with budget discussions. When I go for the money, then I give the numbers. We're gonna replace this many PCs. We need another technician because, we should have 75 PCs. I brought the numbers are crazy. The number used to be 75 PCs per technician. We have 2 and we have 1,000. Okay, so those numbers are blown out of the water. I have to adjust. I have to use common sense in the reality and know the budget process in the community, knowing that I'm not gonna get the dollars. We have to say footsteps with remote connectivity, those type of things, and there are certain things we can't get to in order to get people up. So those are some of the things, if I was to bring numbers, I'd have 10 people here with me, or a lot more than we have. So, but I do bring those to budget discussions when I bring them forward. In the technology plan, like I said, the purpose of it at first was the state outlining the state requirement. Yes, that's why it was driven. It was driven by the state requirement to have it and to keep it updated.
It's more or less a 30,000-foot overview.
Absolutely.
Versus the on-the-ground, dollars for X number of PCs per person, et cetera.
Because even the number of PCs that can be supported by one person has changed over the years with remote connectivity and that type of thing, saving the footsteps. It used to be 75 and it's not 75. And those numbers, those numbers are changing along with the technology itself and the ability to be able to gain access to a PC and sit at your desk and gain access to multiple PCs. So, those type of things have also been changing within the technology world itself.
And I appreciate the fact that you brought to our thinking the idea that what you're doing is a result of the 18 requirements. It isn't like you're generating and I'm imagining that you are just gritting your teeth and sitting on your hands sometimes because you want something so badly, but you have it to make a decision in the framework of who you're supporting. And you're not, for lack of a better word, free to just charge out there with some idea that isn't coordinated with the administrative team. And I think what I'm hearing from the discussion is that there's sort of two things happening, or two separate discussions. One is what you guys do to support what the board and the A-team want, and perhaps it's just not clear enough, and I don't know how you would put it in a document of all of that without the document being 100 pages. So I appreciate the idea of backup, but I'm not sure that that's what a technology plan is.
Is it 2 separate documents?
It's two separate discussions.
No, but I'm wondering if it's 2 separate documents. One to meet the state requirements, the high level, this is the general direction that the district's technology plan is taking, and then a separate document, equally as important, that sort of outlines more specifically at the local building level what the nuts and bolts are, that, in terms of numbers and PCs and things like that. Corey and
Ellen?
I don't know.
I guess my thought is that it seems there's an opportunity right now in that Bob mentioned that the state isn't requiring this plan anymore. So it seems that maybe they themselves know that districts need to sort of design. So maybe our next plan our next version of this plan might be very different because we'd be able to control it a little bit. Because right now, he's had to follow the model that they asked me, that's what we've been working with, but they've sort of set us free from that. So maybe a new design of what that, it might look like different. Instead of two different documents, I'm thinking they could be merged as one.
Are we free to do that now is the question, or is that, does this one need to be submitted to the state, or are we free to go?
I don't believe it does. I don't believe it has to be. We are covered through the year 2014. Well, yeah, school year.
I wanted to think that we, as educators and as people, we want to go ahead and push everyone to be visionary. What is the saying here? Like visionary, thinkers, thoughtful, empathetic. A technology plan for the state is one thing, but SAU's vision is another. And that should have always been the guiding principle. And I guess by hearing we have the freedom to do that is actually discouraging. We've always had the freedom to think. We've always had the ability to be at the forefront, 2 years ahead of the cloud curve. Congratulations. So we're not restricted to do something, we're restricted to stop thinking. So needless to say, to go ahead and say we're meeting the state needs is one thing, but meeting SAU's needs, the community needs, the board's needs, your needs is another. And I guess that's what I want to say here is like, my needs as a townsman is like, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing like, well, if my daughter wants to bring a computer to the classroom, is she gonna have a rich experience or is she gonna have a struggling experience? If I'm a teacher in a classroom with 30 kids in front of me, is she gonna have, and I want to, turn a computer on, is it gonna be a rich experience or is it gonna be a struggle? Right? Is it gonna be a struggle because there's not enough literacy from the staff member, from literacy from the student, professional development? Or is there not enough understanding of what the actual load can bear? So,
I think you're misunderstanding, Corey.
I was gonna ask you
yeah,
that
this
question.
Please, am I
No, this is our plan. I've written this plan for the SAU with specific goals specific to Kingston, Newton, and Fremont, not specific to the state. It had a certain outline and a certain configuration that it had to be. It had to have a table of contents, it had to have a timeline, it had to have budgets. Those particular things probably won't go into the next one, but this is written for us in that format. I didn't put the numbers in. Some districts may put the numbers in. I didn't. I looked at myself at the time. I've been in the district 13, over 15 years or something. I don't even remember anymore. But I've been through discussions, budget discussions, at 2 a.m. in the morning on where a $400 digital camera belongs in the budget, whether it belongs in the Bakey budget or in the technology budget. So we're dealing with a community that really wasn't looking for those kind of numbers. Now maybe people like yourself coming into the community are more looking for that kind of number. When I go out for a technology, we don't have any money for a technology committee. There's none in the budget. We did this through email because people can't meet after school because we can't pay them. And we also can't get them to get on the committee. So, the interest is not there. This is mine and Amy's plan with, a few people with some input. But we have written it for the district. And in order, we didn't want to bog down people with numbers. I can put exactly how many PCs we have in the plan, what we have for ongoing costs of the internet. That's not a big deal, but I was trying to make it simplified for people to look at it and say, look, we need to make sure that we budget for the internet, no matter what it costs, to keep things up and keep the connectivity running. The budget for the internet now, today, is not going to be the same as it is next year if we're able to increase the bandwidth. So those are type of things that I didn't want to have to change on a yearly basis. This is the state outline, but it's certainly written for a Sanborn.
If I may, I would be more than happy to give you any information about the literacy because I can promise you it's visionary and the students are getting a very rich experience every day.
I don't doubt that because actually I'm very proud of what I hear on a daily basis, just at that point, I'm truly actually proud.
Is it safe to say that some specifics need to be there for it to be a goal where you can, how, if you're not specific, how do you measure your goal? Is that what you're saying?
Benchmark.
Maybe that's,
Many of the benchmarks we used were based on the district's 5-year strategic plan. Untouchable budget, required professional development for technology. We used many of those as a framework.
And in your, the tail end of the tech plan, beginning on page 33, you actually have a budget listed for computer replacements, which are in a separate 5-year plan, and you have dollar amounts, I'm gonna say suggested dollar amounts, for each of the 3 years of the plan. District server replacement, instructional and media technology. So there's a number of areas here, several pages of budget, two full pages of budget items, for licensing, equipment, software, hardware, et cetera, so that ties back to some of the things in terms of what's in the written part of the tech plan. I think a lot of the information is in there, but maybe just not in the narrative at the end.
Not a personal attack.
What's that?
Not a personal attack whatsoever.
no, my biggest thing is just, getting you the funds that have been cut for so often, you know what I mean? The one way is with that warrant article, but we need to sell that. That's what I'm like. I just want to be able to sell to people. Well, why are they asking for that money? And what are they gonna do? And maybe that is a separate document that we need to start pushing out there between now and.
I've always given the whys when we ask for money. I mean, that's been the way there was no, I didn't train with anybody when I started. The person was already gone, so, and it was my first delve into the school district coming from business. And when I went for the money, when I asked for the money, there was always the reasons why I'm asking for this money. And that was where I separated it. This was being a general plan to guide us. We're going to put as many devices in the hands of kids that we can. I didn't know iPads was coming out. When I wrote the first one, iPads didn't exist. So I had no idea I couldn't ask for 380 of them because I didn't know they existed. We had to adapt in the middle of that plan to the fact that we were gonna have iPads. How many are we gonna get? So with the budgetary explanation on a yearly and annual basis, it's easier to keep up with that and say, look, we're gonna go with iPads because they meet these pieces of the education piece. So, a lot of the things that come out, we had no idea. We had no idea about the cloud, until, we went to a seminar on it. So those were things that then I had to go and ask for the funds. And then that's when I present, why the cloud would be good, why we give 724 access to kids, what it'll give for kids, that type of thing. So, that's always been, that's been the process that I've taken in order to give the community the knowledge that they get. It's in the budget discussions where we ask for the money.
So with the bring your own device that we're starting to have options and look at, I know that the kids obviously bring their devices to school and they hook up with the wireless networks. What are the biggest challenges, I guess, to kind of moving forward with that in I guess a more formal way, I guess, of a one-on-one, under one computer type, besides budget? Obviously that's.
No, the biggest thing would be curriculum. it would take, it would take a change in our curriculum in order to do that. In other words, we would have to have teachers on board with, we'd have to develop some kind of curriculum for being able to use devices in the classroom. Right now, there are small ways you can do it as far as, Word documents and things like that, but to take it to another level, we'd have to require kids to have it. We would first have to attack, to make sure equality in device, one of the things that allows us to use the BYOD is actually the cloud itself, because the cloud is adaptable to many different devices so that we know that the kid gets that desktop when they pull it up, so it gives some kind of equality. But you don't know whether a kid is going to, or a student's going to be on a phone, or an iPad, or a laptop. And the biggest thing with one-to-one is, like I said, it's financial. I mean, you have to guarantee that you're going to have that money there every year. You can't just give all your 7th graders something and then the next year say, we don't have the money for it. So one-to-one is very financially restricted. You have to have that money. But the biggest thing would be us developing a curriculum around having teachers use devices in the classroom. Some people are more comfortable with it, others aren't.
And actually, part of that comfort level stems from the earlier cell phone policies that have sort of gone by the wayside. There's still, in some areas, the idea that you shouldn't have your cell phone in class. And then I walk in there and I say, no, get your cell phones out. We're going to use them. We're going to use them for this or for that. So you'll find, depending on the school and the age level, you'll find that there's a different varieties of teacher comfort with a student having a device, which is usually a phone.
That's a digital citizenship that I'm very, your early adopters. You guys are doing a great job. You have Google Apps for Education, so that's out of the gate a collaboration tool to start with. You're destigmatizing the environment to now have students and staff work together. And that's obviously awesome use case, and you're going to be able to build upon that experience, that proof of concept. You're correct, with mobile phones and such, as you develop the digital citizen, those challenges go away because it's comfortable. And I don't like to punch you, sit here all night and think about it and talk about it. So thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion about the approving the technology plan? I think as a board we have to approve it.
I'll make a motion to approve the technology plan.
For, what were your dates? So that-
214 to 217, I believe.
15 to 18.
15 days.
So you're off.
Okay, so it's in the minutes.
I'll second.
Is there any more discussion? All in favor of approving the plan? Thank you, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, and I think what's emerging, there's a kind of a bubble emerging here, and I just made a note to myself about a strategic plan. Very, very much a part of the next strategic plan discussion. Is this, again,
There's a whole strand.
and it's all changed since 5 years ago. So,
We're
and,
going to pretty heavily in the present strategic.
yeah, but now it's different because it changes so fast. So, and Corey's remarks brings up a whole nother level of communicating that business to the public who, like me, is not as fluent in the language.
Tech savvy.
We don't say that anymore.
No, I
You say
think,
it going.
thank you very
I
much.
will say, though, that the current state of our technology is greatly improved, I believe, as a result of the strategic plan that was written, and having those, I don't want to call them non-negotiables, but those hard, fast statements in there about the budget and about certain things that we needed in order to move forward, and paying close attention to those over the last 5 years as a district. It certainly will be a key strand in the next strategic plan.
What's after the cloud, the universe, I think. Or maybe, a star collapse or something, we're all going.
A black hole.
It'll be somebody else, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next up is Andrew Howard, who's here to talk to us about the NWEA assessments. As you know, NWEA is a national standardized assessment that we've been involved with as a school district for going on 10 years, 8 or 10 years now. So we have a lot of data to look back on. And we've moved to a fall-to-fall administration of the assessment. So what we have this evening are the most recent assessment results for each grade.
Yeah. I'll pass them on to our audience members.
I have more.
The show got one.
No, what, was this for me?
Yeah, there were two of them, right?
Are they both, oh, they're the same?
Yep, they're the
Okay.
same.
They're both the same.
So I have actually
One was math, and one was,
Yes, it's one pager.
it said math, what, it shows math.
Math, yeah.
So, Ellen?
Sure, so, I don't know if you remember last spring, but we talked a little bit about that, because the Smarter Balance Assessment is a spring assessment, that we needed to shift our benchmarking of student achievement and performance, to more, to a different schedule. Because our biggest state exam will happen actually in the spring, and the NECAP used to be a fall assessment, that's where we got most of our information. So this is our first administration of the online Northwest Evaluation Association's, what they call measures of academic progress. And so we took this in the fall, and I promised you that I'd bring in a little check-in. I had hoped to do it a couple of months earlier. We did this in the fall, but I wanted to make sure that you had this. So this is our check-in as a fall assessment. You see the 3 arrows are Sanborn scores. That's where we fall. This is a scaled score. It's not really an elaborate reporting because it isn't broken up by the strands of what the different tests represents. This is more of a streamlined one-pager for you. This Northwest evaluation has a couple of advantages for us as we go into this year. The first one is that it's an online assessment. It's always been online. But now it's on the internet, it's more web-based, it's quicker. A lot of things have been changed, and those adaptations have gone into changes that look more like what Smarter Balance looks like. Small tools that students use while they take the assessment, drop-downs for calculators, all these types of things. So it really mirrors the experience that students would have in the spring pretty accurately for us. So it gave us a real feel for how kids would perform on the online Smarter Balance assessment. The second piece is this is a norm-referenced assessment. Millions of students across the United States take this test, and we are now falling into what we call the fall-to-fall assessment measure, or growth measure. So we're being compared to students across the country and at this time of year, at this grade level, and how they perform. So it's based on a lot of students taking the test. This is not a state exam. This is a national exam. So often we're asked, well, how did Rochester do compared to Sanborn? There is no data that tells us that, and NWA will never do that. They're not meant to compare that way. And we're not privy to Rochester's data, so we can't go make the comparisons ourselves. So if you look, what's in the grader column, it has an arrow above, tells you that NWEA's norm score for students in kindergarten right now in the fall was 142.5 in reading, and our students scored in the fall 147.8. The next column is where they should be at the end of the year. That's the spring benchmark, and that'd be 157.7. What you notice at the primary levels, pretty much to grade 3, is that the expectation is about 10 points or more growth at the primary level. When you get closer past 6th grade and 7th grade, the expectations become 1, 2, 3, 4 points. But I think it's safe to say, if you look at these scores, that we are right now preliminarily looking at data that shows that we're in pretty good shape
as we start to collect data on things like how is competency education being played out in our district, how is it impacting our schools. Particularly, our students didn't really have much loss over the summer, because this is a fall assessment. That's the first thing that struck me, that we are still strong coming into the fall. The other piece is the level of strength at the secondary level in math, an area of big concern for us. And when we dig down into the tests, I made note of it that, in particular, our grades 1, 2, and 5 were very strong in geometry, but we were very close in several strands at the secondary level of being considered for a strong performance overall. So those are the type of things I'm looking at for a collection of data as we go into what the Smarter Balance is going to show us as indicators of how we're going to perform on a test like the Smarter Balance assessment, and really our progress in general. So I'm pretty happy right now with this administration, so this assessment, and I didn't know if you had any questions. We actually take the assessment in 3 areas: reading, language arts, and mathematics. And it's completely aligned to the Common Core state standards. So it's we've been working with those for 5 years. So. Whereas I think in good reference, the NECAP was not aligned to this Common Core. And so our assessment results on the NECAP have been somewhat skewed because we've been focusing on the Common Core all along for the last 5 years. Because we knew those were the standards that were being assessed.
So they took this test when?
Fall.
So like right when
September.
school started? And when do they take the spring?
They'll take the spring around middle of May into June, and it'll be staggered. For the first time, we'll take a they call it just a survey at the end. We leave our biggest battery test to the fall now in this, so it just takes a little bit longer. One of the things about NWA that's very interesting is it's an adaptive test. So it's based on student performance as they're taking the test. Students who perform the strongest tend to have to be in the test longer because they're challenged by more challenging questions. When we first started taking NWEA, they've always clocked how long our students take to take the test. And on average, I'm going to pick 3rd grade and take the standard 3rd grade. 3rd grade students spent between 38 and 42 minutes taking the Smarter Balance test, the NWA test. This year, they took 58 minutes on average. So for me, that's an indicator of how many more students are being challenged and being put through the adaptive pieces and are focused and have the perseverance in an online assessment. So that's just a sort of a dig down analysis that I've done. This is the first time we've done this web-based piece, so it's preliminary for me because I'd like to see a second administration and see what that sort of looks like. But that was observed by our teachers, and it was observed by the assistant principals who do most of the supervision of NWEA, that the kids were with the test longer, stayed with it longer, and they had some pretty challenging questions. So I think that also is an indicator of where our kids are.
I think one of the best things we ever did was when the board did that test.
I know you had fun.
I think we should do it again. I think it was very interesting. I think it would give everybody, because am I the only one left?
Yeah, I need to.
I'm the only one.
So it's very informative.
It was very informative.
Well, you can right now have an experience. You can go on to this, and the guys here have been incredibly helpful with this. Every one of the teachers in our system have taken the Smarter Balance practice test. And many of our students have done the Smarter Balance practice test. And you can do that. I can bring in that link, and you can see exactly what our kids are going to take in the spring for Smarter Balance. If you'd like to run through that, because there's a lot of correlations to the experience and what that looks like, that might be the little exercise.
I think that's a fabulous indicator that everybody was sitting down longer paying attention.
Yeah.
Because they get progressively.
You know me, I like to see it happen a couple more times. I'm big on consistency.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
But that's an important factoid.
We've cultivated a lot of work habit practices around the idea of perseverance, of giving your best effort, staying with, through some of the different assessments we have. And of course, I'm sure you've read the grade 9's grit challenge that they have with kids, but it's sticking. Our kids are really showing a lot of perseverance, especially in these type of assessments.
It's interesting.
In looking at this, it would appear that we're slightly above the norm for the students across the nation for the fall. And on 6 of them, we're higher than what is expected in the spring. But that's not an indicator that we're going to necessarily be that, because will the material in the spring be new material learned from when this test was taken, or is it it's new and similar?
It's a year's worth of growth, so your observation is correct. There are several grade levels that have already surpassed what they should score in the spring. But what we've always looked at with NWA is growth in general. So what we're looking for is students, even if they're scoring very high, to still continue to make growth, because it's an indicator of our ability to meet their needs within the classroom. That's really the real focus of NWA. But yes, several of our kids the average score is already past what spring should be. And just as a note, one of the things that's a negative about NWA for me is that in many ways, many of our strongest students in 8th grade, 9th grade, they out-NEWA. They score so high that it's just not an assessment that gives a lot of return for them as a strong students. So when you're seeing all these kids, this is the average score. And so we've got a lot of very strong kids in the system, and obviously, and they've been making consistent growth. We've seen our increase in growth in NEWA go from 36% 8 years ago to 68% in the last several years. 65% of our students making exactly the growth they were predicted to make. Some still made growth, but maybe didn't make all 10 points, so that's one of the positives.
Is this actually being used to assist in giving instructions? Are teachers actually using this?
When you drill down in NWA, the individual teacher gets a wide array of information on different, it goes so far as to do prescriptive lessons for students with particular things that the test noticed that they struggle with, multiple questions. It's still not embedded in our curriculum. It's still outside our curriculum. So for me, it's second best. What's best is what we do for assessment in the classroom. But this is very helpful to teachers. It helps us place kids in special interventions if we find that they need it. But it's only one point in data, so we usually combine it with a couple of things. Like Fontes and Pinnell reading were the big comparison for the teachers at the elementary level with this, are always seeing.
And these results are overnight, within a day or two of taking.
Within 10 minutes of uploading.
Yeah. So it's not an assessment that we don't get back for months on end, as was the case with the kneecap testing. We take it and you wouldn't get the results back for the following school year.
It's very flexible. Teachers now can set windows, so the kids who are at risk, or kids who, for instance, have had some real enrichment, if a teacher feels that they want to see how their instruction has worked, at the primary level, it can be very directed and diagnostic. It can be assessed, a certain skill can be assessed. So it's a great little task. It doesn't have everything, nothing does, but we've used it to guide.
Who's proctoring the tests? Who's proctoring the tests?
Our proctors in all the schools are trained. Most of them are technology. Our technology teachers take the lead, but our classroom teachers go with students as they're taking the test, and there's usually a paraprofessional in the room, and so it's really good for teachers to observe how kids respond to questions and what they have and how they react. It's helped us a lot in our preparation for what a SMART balance test will look like. We've always performed well in this test, I'll be honest with you. We've always been thank you. I don't know if you did. We've always been at the national norm or a little bit higher. Now we're just really creeping a lot. Now we're starting to creep a lot higher.
So you mentioned that we've gone from 30-ish% to 68%
Yep.
of the students are following, I guess, their expected. So
Right.
is that something that, when they're in grade 1, they take NEWAs, they get a particular score,
Yeah.
then you pretty much are projecting out from that point on that this
The
is
growth
where they
indicator.
should be
Yeah.
in 8th grade or whatever.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about the growth indicator in NWA is that 68% of our students made growth, for instance, but many of the students who didn't make growth were already at or above grade level. Because it takes them from exactly where they are and moves them forward. And kids grow in different ways. One, you'll see kids that'll have lots of growth in third grade math, and not so much in reading. They may be at grade level or above, and then the next year, because kids developmentally make different charges. So we look at the growth indicator because we feel that's most reflective of whether or not we've met the needs of students in the classroom, even if they're the top student or they're a student that struggles. So we were looking at, did we match curriculum and instruction to their needs? So 68% may not seem like a lot for growth. Don't take that number to mean that kids aren't at grade level. Most of them are.
So on the results that we got for the fall testing, are these, I mean, we're above, obviously, which is already mentioned, all the fall averages, the country averages, I guess. Is this similar to what we've had over the last 5 years, or is this, like, are we higher now than, I mean, previously we were at the average, are we seeing our trend going up as well over the last 5 years?
Consistently across grades, we're above grade level, and we've had years where we've been at the norm or a little below, but for several years we've been 1 point above. You can see 1 or 2 points makes a difference when it's 130 kids in a grade level when it's their average. So I would say that the last 2 years have seen definitely a better performance.
It'd be interesting to have the practice test for the Smarter Valley.
And we can set that up.
You don't all get to go in a room together.
No, you can use your computer sitting right here and you just run it. So I'll come back and check in with you guys before we start, what other indicators we have of how we're doing Smart Balance. It's a new venture for all of us, so first.
Thank you very much. Other questions?
Oh, thank you.
In student council right now, we're just still working on winter carnival, and the carnival begins on Monday, February 16th, and goes until Friday, February 20th, and that's the last day before February completion. And basically in our meetings, we've been working on zero days, and we come up with Monday's Nerd Day, Tuesday's Fancy Day, Wednesday's Sports Theme Day, Thursday's Theme Day, and Friday is Color Day.
What's Monday?
Nerd Day. Which isn't very nice, because they're all gonna dress up like me.
What is Friday?
Friday's Color Day.
Which class has a color?
And we have.
So you can do your Lady Gaga thing on that day. And you'll feel very different.
And we're just working towards getting the faculty involved for those days. We would really appreciate it if we could dress up. I mean, some of them are harder to. And then we've just been voting on the events for after school and looking for judges.
You doing a scavenger hunt?
I think so, yeah. Not the same one that we've done in the past. Just one with school.
In that too?
I don't know. Yes. I have a packet someplace.
What's the theme?
Musical.
Oh, right. I had to take that week off from now. Oh.
The whole week.
Nerd musical.
Friday.
Any other questions for Bill? Thank you.
What was Thursday's day? Theme day? Theme day, yeah.
Budget committee?
Our last meeting was last Wednesday at the public hearing. And for those of you who weren't there, we had the slide presentation of the budget, and we didn't even meet afterwards. Actually, we just agreed to our next meeting, which will be tomorrow.
I said something to Barry because I think it's important to reframe the language. And I asked him to take out the word tax burden. And I think we need to reframe that. And I don't know what the correct word is exactly, except contribution maybe? Or responsibility.
We are going to be going over the individual slides tomorrow night and tweaking them somewhat. So perhaps that will, I hope, get removed.
It's okay. Public comment. Welcome back.
Good to be here. Good to have something to say. To respond to Mr., and I apologize, Masson.
You can call me that, but it's Mason. It's probably defranchised. Mr. Rasmus. I haven't asked for my name yet.
Mr. Mason. It brought me back to similar types of conversations that I've been a party to and I've heard for all the years that we go into the budget season and the political season and go away from the technical school education season. And I think that the point you raised is important, and I think you sort of came to half of the answer to it, in my opinion, and that is that we do have two different documents. We have an inside the Beltway document, which is this or something that this will evolve to, but we need the political document. We need the talk to the public document that translates this into the types of language and motivations and expectations and measurements and things that were mentioned. And as I was thinking of this, and remind me if, was the district established in 1966? Does anybody remember? It was in the 60s. Because before I forget this point, we may be coming up on 50 years as a district, and that's an important milestone that should be celebrated. So now I've planted that seed, so I'll work on from that.
Thanks.
It occurred to me that this body is doing things the same way it did them back then and when I was on the board in the 90s. Is it not time to consider hiring staff to support the body that governs a 30 however many $1 million public entity? Staff, I mean, I've been, part of these efforts to get out the vote and do the political side. I hated it then, wasn't good at it. And I don't want the school staff to be doing the political stuff either. Isn't it the responsibility of the school board to have staff that could create some of these documents, do some of these tasks that would make your job more efficient, more effective? So I guess that's where I came to from Mr. Mason's initial conversation, and then the response, and then thinking back. So I guess I would ask that the board at some point, appropriate time, consider whether it's time now to have staff whose only responsibility is to support the work of the governing body. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you. More public comment.
Thank you. Couple of questions. One of the school board members was speaking of the need for voters to understand what it is that they're being asked to support with the technology plan. And to that point, I was wondering, is this plan available to the public? And if so, where might the public find this document? Another question in regards to NWEA. The assessment data is available quite quickly, and teachers can use that to guide their instruction. I was wondering, do we have in the district, do we feel that we have the resources that we need in order to address those deficits that we find and provide the interventions that the students need? And then, in regards to the technology plan as well, I was a little bit disheartened to hear a statement to the effect of that you cannot force yourself into a classroom and train teachers. We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars each year on technology. Now granted, that technology isn't all geared towards students, it's geared towards teachers, towards running the district, but there's a considerable amount of money being spent, and we have goals for our students to become technology savvy. I would like more to hear that, no, we're not going to force someone into the classroom and force the teachers to be trained. But I think if this is part of our goal, that we're going to become a 21st century district and want to educate our students so that they can be prepared, that teachers would be required to have professional development. This is the job, this is the goal of the district. Why wouldn't it be required? Even if people may not feel comfortable with it, I think it should be a requirement. And maybe people certainly do have come to it with different levels of knowledge and skill. And I think that we have a savvy enough staff to address the needs of individual teachers. So you might have one that's very savvy, needs training in a particular area to bring their class and their students forward. But those who have been reluctant to accept the technology, why can't we meet them where they are and provide what they need to feel more comfortable, instead of saying, well, we might come into your classroom, we might help you along, and you may not feel comfortable, but we're going to wait till you get to that point. It seems to me that we need to be a little more aggressive in efforts to get those teachers who may not be as comfortable, give them what they need to be comfortable, to apply what we have in technology. Because I don't think it's fair to the students. It depends on what teacher I get this year, whether or not I'm going to get technology integrated into my instruction. I don't think that's fair. I think every student should be on an equal level. This teachers should be trained to integrate that technology and provide that for every student, not depending on whether a particular teacher feels comfortable with it or has availed themselves for professional training. Thank you.
Thank you. School board comment? School board comment?
I would like to say that we do have intervention blocks where if teachers feel that students need intervention, I'm sure when they see that stuff on the things that they go in and they reteach that and we work with students.
Unfinished business?
Oh, we're done? May I ask for an explanation where John is, by chance?
I'm going to talk about that.
It's on the agenda?
Under communications received and sent.
Okay.
Unfinished business? New business? Warrant articles?
warrant articles for our review and final vote.
I have the copy. Is this next?
We have enough copies. How many copies did you make?
I have the digital copy.
Thank you.
Maybe, in looking at the warrant, maybe we're gonna ask that we, can I ask that we table new business for just a moment and move on to communications received and sent? And the reason will be clear in a second. Please, the board.
Okay.
I have in front of me, Mr. Morano sent an email to me regarding his difficulty in meeting the requirements of continuing on as a board member due to what I'll say is personal reasons. He works a number of different jobs, and just the time commitment that is required for board service and to be actively involved in the board is not, the time isn't available to him. So he's sent me an email indicating that he would like to resign from board service. Missed, as you know, a number of meetings. He was out of town for a while, dealing with some family issues in California. Came back, he's had some different things going on, job responsibilities, et cetera, that have included him, and he's just come to the decision that he can no longer serve as a board member. So we have a resignation before us. With it being this close to the election, the board has the opportunity to either appoint someone until the election or leave the seat vacant, and then put on the warrant, and we'll see that I've had it put on the warrant now. We'll be asked to approve tonight and change the agenda items. His seat would be up next year, so in March we would be electing a board member for a one-year position to fill his seat.
2 years.
In 2 years?
Yes. This was his first year.
I myself,
He sat in a position for, there's somebody else sat in that seat for a year. He was elected for a 2-year period.
Oh, okay, sorry.
He'd be at large, right?
Oh, he must be, he must
He's
have
at
taken
large.
Renee's, right, Renee took it for a year, and then he replaced her for the last 2 years. So it would be.
No, Corey took Renee's, Rebecca was the at large.
Yeah, Rebecca was
Oh, okay. So yours is 2 years, and so his would have been 3, so he's got 2 left.
John is the at
Go
large.
ahead.
Go ahead.
He is the at-large member, he was elected for a 3-year term.
This
In
past.
2/3, in 2,
14, a year ago, we just finished
so
his
it's
first
2
year.
years? Yeah.
So it'll be a 2-year term, and we can make that adjustment. Nonetheless, we'll come back to that, but right now, I need a motion to accept his.
Well, I have a question. When did he email you that he was resigning?
The beginning of January, the end of December, beginning of January, original email, and then I went to talk to him, January 8th. He was at practice, and then I wasn't able to talk to him during his practice, and he emailed me again.
I wish that we had had that email sent to us. This is the kind of stuff that we talk about being forthcoming, And I don't feel like, I feel like the chair should have let us know. If he sent an email on December 15th, he hasn't been here since the beginning of November. We've had no one in that seat. He's been excused, and there was something said back in December that Laura Sherby was gonna come back, but there wasn't really any. And now we're at the deadline to promote this position. It's like we sat on this for almost 2 months. Where's the communication with us?
When is the last day for filing? When is the last day that this could possibly get onto the warrant, thus allowing for adequate timing?
The filing period opened yesterday or today, and then it goes until next Friday.
Right. So ultimately, if we're sitting on information though, and we had a budget meeting last week with just 2 line items up there, which was after the 8th. 2 line items on the budget that was presented and that we wasn't a whole lot of communications on, or discussion, I should say, and only had 2 seats there. That was after the 8th. There's a lot more people that were there than here, and there's a lot more people on the budget than this possibly. Is that adequate communication to the community as well?
I just feel like the minute that he wasn't gonna be coming, the minute that he resigned, we should know about it.
Better yet, he's a public figure. He's in the coach's role. His peers know before we do.
Should we continue this conversation?
It's public information.
But it's about a person, so that's the.
This isn't a conversation about the board's transparency, not necessarily John or anyone else.
Yep.
I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated. I want communication. Communication received and sent. That stuff should be sent to us. It's not up to the chair to decide what we know. Unless it has to do with a legal thing and where we might have to have hearings. And it makes us look bad. It makes us look bad. I'm embarrassed.
Quite possibly, frankly, the reason why there's been 3 vacant seats 3 years in a row. Because of inappropriate or lack of communication, effectiveness of the communication. It's a challenge. Right? Is it 3 years in a row now? Forgive me, I'm obviously taking the place of a vacant seat.
I don't know that I would agree with that, because as long as I've been on the board, it's been difficult as long as I've been here, I should say, it's been difficult to fill school board positions every year. I don't know that that has to do with anything with communication other than lack of interest.
People want to be involved in it, many people want to be involved when there's integrity, when there's success, and when there's opportunity. And these type of things stall that initiative, stall that excitement, stall that, you know. It is a lack of transparency, to be quite frank, and I apologize. I'm just embarrassed because what happens if I found out at a gas station? What happens if I found out from somebody else? I'm finding out at the same time they are. Not proficient communication. Sorry. It's not how I feel, it's just true. We don't want to teach this young lady right here, this is that, but
It's not a deliberate attempt to shield the truth, though.
did you know?
And I think that's when, where the line or the assumption is incorrect. it's just the way that business has always been done. So it wasn't anything deliberate, oh, we're not gonna tell anybody. It's just that there's always been a time and a place, which has been at a school board meeting for communications sent. We certainly, as a body, can change that. But again, it certainly isn't any intention to keep anybody in the dark about anything, other than, as said earlier, anything that's legal and up to the discretion of the chair. It was not, I can guarantee it was not a conscious thought that, oh, we're not gonna say anything to the board, we're not gonna send them an email. It was, we have a meeting next week, we'll discuss it at the meeting. I don't believe there was any malice or forethought in it, I really don't.
I appreciate the fact that you know
I didn't say I knew.
But the way you're speaking speaks to the line that you said last week, you found out, and we'll discuss that next week.
I didn't say I found out
But then I don't
last
right
week.
now believe anything.
I didn't even say I found out last week, I said nothing.
What did she just say? She did say something of that extent.
I think she was speaking
I know,
from the
but-
point of view of the chair.
Right.
That The chair
Thank you,
did
John.
not consciously make a decision not to share information
All right.
because, you know, it was holding back. It's precedent, how everything's been done. And if we want to change that, then
That's kind of
Then we
where
Then why
should-
did you do that?
that's why I feel.
then we should
That's not the
change
way
it.
it should go.
Or we should request a change in how that stuff is done.
My point was that it was not deliberate, and no, I did not know the answer to the question.
And my,
How do you speak for somebody else? I guess that's my thought. How are you speaking for somebody else? Only
Because I was
for yourself.
chair, and it would never have crossed my mind to present it other than at the board meeting.
Okay, but how many board meetings do we have to wait for it to be presented? If we're talking about a letter on December 15th,
And I didn't hear that date brought up. If we're gonna start talking about who said what when, I never heard December 15th brought up. You said at the end of December, beginning of January. And my thought, when he was discussing this, was he got it at the end of December. He wanted to talk to John first to perhaps see if he could convince him otherwise. That's exactly how I interpreted it. So I had no issue with it whatsoever.
I mean, I interpret it the same way. You're trying to convince someone not to, it's like if you're losing an employee. You're gonna try to talk, if the person is a valuable employee, you're gonna talk to them, you're gonna try, you know, is there anything we can do to work this out? If there's not, then okay, sorry, I'll accept your resignation and move on. Personally, that's the way I feel
Yeah.
that this was handled, and I mean, you can,
right, it's not so much, the problem is that why is the info not shared with them from the beginning? I guess that's the thing. I'm not saying that it was purposely held, but what I'm saying is that it doesn't look good, whether it was the intent or not. That's my thing, you know? I've been wondering what's going on with John. I call him up, he tells me I already resigned. I have to call the guy and say, where have you been? What's going on? Are you sick? And then he forwards me emails that he thought we already had. So that's where December 15th comes from. So what else don't we know about? You know what I mean? That's why I'm upset. We fight so much to say that we're a strong board and that we're working together, but then we're left in the dark. And then we have people calling us rubber stamps. Well, I'm not a rubber stamp. If we let this stuff happen, it just will fall apart.
I feel that I have just egg on my face. I'm just embarrassed. That's why my passion.
yeah, I don't think the board needs to have egg on their face. I mean, I received a letter from Corey, John, yeah, Corey, from John, wanting to resign his position.
I wanted to talk to him about it. We tried to schedule time to sit down and have that conversation. It didn't take place. I went to see him in January, beginning of January, to talk to him about it. And then I got a follow-up email from him saying that he needed to resign. So, I don't know that it's egg on anybody's face, perhaps except my own. So, and I'll own that. Okay.
Yeah, but you're not the chair of the board. It's the chair's board to, it's the chair, and I'm sorry, Jim, but it is. It's your responsibility to communicate effectively with the other board members about what's going on. It's not his job.
In a sense, it is as the superintendent.
It's different from opinion.
Should pass that along. Anyway.
Sorry.
Well, no, point made, point taken. We can get back to business at hand. We have a resignation. The board should act on. Then we can move on to the warrant.
I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of John Milano as school board member at large.
Second, with regret.
Further discussion? All in favor? Thank you.
And then the other information that was in your packet, I had sent a letter to the Newton Office of Selectmen, just asking again to have the voting moved back to the Memorial School from the Newton Town Hall. There seems to be some confusion in Newton as to what the desire of the school district was. Several years ago, my understanding was prior to my arrival here, the voting was actually held at Memorial School. And then it was moved over to the Newton Town Hall, and I've heard complaints year after year about the voting being held there. Traffic, snowbanks, the mud, standing in line, getting kids in and out of the car on 108 there. And so I've made multiple requests. I appeared before the selectmen one year at a selectmen's meeting to ask that we move it back to the town hall, back to Memorial School. And I sent another letter this year to the selectmen to see if they would be in favor of moving it back to the town, to the Memorial School for voting day. So that was the other piece of communication sent. Have to get presented at a selectmen's meeting, so anticipating.
They had one meeting.
I don't know if it was on their agenda or not.
Thank you for trying.
Warrant articles?
Okay, so in your packets, it was just handed out a little bit ago. You have the proposed warrant for this year. So at this point, folks an opportunity to review those again.
So how does that sentence fit in here?
2 years.
Well, is the at-large position? Should it say on
Kingston for Newton?
Kingston/Newton?
Yep.
2 years.
Yep.
And identify it as the at-large position.
No, we just have to list numbers.
Carol, what exactly is it that you need tonight?
Need a motion for each one of those warrant articles, a second, and a vote for or against or abstention. And then the school board will need to sign the default budget I have here. And after the budget committee votes tomorrow night on each one of these warrant articles, the district warrant will be ready to be signed by the school board members, and then it must be posted. We're scheduled to post it, we'll put it off until we get your signatures, but we need to get your signatures anyway. And they'll have to be original signatures. The only other option I can give you is to sign, signature page, see, that's up to you.
I would rather not sign
No.
the signature page this evening. I would rather wait till after the meeting, and folks will have to make themselves available.
So everybody's gonna make themselves available Monday morning, or Monday, sometime on Monday? Yeah.
What's the latest that it can be?
So she said Monday.
Well, I mean, it's scheduled for Friday.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what the law says as far as the latest date, but given other constraints, I mean, we need to get this posted at the beginning of the week, especially because you have another elected official that's not presented to the public, and so you would want to get that out as soon as possible.
Should we go article by article?
Yes.
And we also decided who's going to announce at the overhead as well.
Who's going to speak to each article?
Correct. I'll make a motion to place on the warrant Article 1 to elect the following school district officers. School board, 1 member from Kingston for 3 years. 1 member from Kingston for 1 year.
No.
No. 1 member from Kingston/Newton for 2 years at large. For 2 years at large. And 1 member from Newton for 3 years. The moderator, 1 elected for 1 year. The budget committee, 1 member from Kingston for 3 years, 1 member from Newton for 3 years.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? That's 5. And it's just 5, right? 'Cause do we have to include Article 2? Okay. Go.
I'll make a motion to accept Article 2 to be placed on the warrant. General acceptance of reports, shall the reports of the school district agents, auditors, committees, or officers chosen to be accepted and placed on file.
I will so second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Thanks. Sometimes that gets voted no. I was interested to read the results.
I'll make a motion to accept on the warrant, Article 3, the operating budget. Shall the Sanborn Regional School District raise and appropriate as an operating budget not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately. The amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant, or as amended by vote at the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $34,812,333. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $34,226,064, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Sanborn Regional School District or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 4013, Roman numeral 10 and 16, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. This warrant article does not include appropriations in any other warrant article.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor? 5, 4. 5
In favor.
in favor. Sorry, someone else want to read this one?
I'll make a motion to place Article 4 on the 2015 school district warrant support staff agreement. Shall the Sanborn Regional School District approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement for support staff reached between the school board and the Sanborn Regional Education Association, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at current staffing levels over the amount paid in the prior fiscal year. Year 1, 2015-16, estimated increase of $21,903. Year 2, 2016-2017, estimated increase of $72,639. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $21,903 for the 2015-2016 fiscal year, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits over those of the appropriation at the current staffing levels.
Have a second?
Oh, I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you, that's 5 in favor.
I'll make a motion to include Article 5 on the 2015 school district warrant, expand the use of facility use revolving fund. Shall the district change the purpose of the facilities use revolving fund established in accordance with RSA 194:3-C by vote on Article 5 at the 2007 school district meeting, which is funded by receipts of rental charges for the use of school facilities, so that it may be used for maintenance, technology cost, and improvement of the district facilities and grounds, with said receipts to be withdrawn from the revolving fund and dispersed monthly as needed. There's no tax impact, majority vote required.
I'll second.
Discussion?
Because you need, it's just a simple majority of the voters that have to approve.
So they will get it confused with the 2/3.
Right.
All in favor? That's 5 in favor.
Just for document's sake, Carol, we're missing the vote for the budget committee on that article.
No, you don't need a budget committee, there's no,
Okay, so
not voting anymore.
okay.
I'll make a motion to include Article 6 on the 2015 school district warrant, establish capital reserve fund for the Sanborn Seminary building. Shall the Sanborn Regional School District vote to establish a capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35:1 to be named Historic Seminary Building Fund for the purpose of funding the renovation and necessary maintenance needs of the Sanborn Seminary building and grounds. To raise and appropriate the sum of up to $100,000 to be placed in said fund that such amount to be funded from the June 30th, 2015 unreserved fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2015, and further to name the Sanborn Regional School Board as agents to expend the funds. This amount is come from fund balance and no amount to be raised from additional taxation. Majority vote required.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Question?
Yes.
Is it a true statement that this is a vote, in the event that the majority vote passes in favor for, this is only a 1 year? This only is an exercise of 1 year. This established capital reserve is a 1 year.
I think you have to do it every year.
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
In future years, we'd be adding to it.
The funds would be there though, so you didn't have to establish it, you would just have to say, put money into it.
This is money. So, all in favor, or questions, or?
It's not a question, discussion, you know. I would say that I don't support this article until we have a better plan of what we're doing with that building. I'm not comfortable spending any money.
Just so you're aware, you're not spending money. You're just putting it aside in the savings account. So in order to spend the money, the school board has to authorize the expenditure.
Further discussion? All in favor? 3, abstain? 1, opposed, did you go opposed? Opposed, abstain. 3, 4? 3 in favor, 2 opposed. 7.
I'll make a motion to place on the 2015 school district warrant, Article 7, establish a capital reserve fund for technology. Shall the Sanborn Regional School District vote to establish a capital reserve fund under the provision of RSA 35:1 to be named a technology fund for the purpose of funding the technology needs of the district, to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $100,000 to be placed in said fund, with such amount to be funded from the June 30th, 2015 unreserved fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2015, and further, to name the Sanborn Regional School Board as agents to expend the fund. This amount to come from fund balance and no amount to be raised from additional taxation, majority vote required.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor? 5 in favor. All right, now going back to who's to speak to what, does anybody have a screening desire?
Well, as we were going over these, I kind of put down people's names who I thought might speak to them.
Who are you volunteering?
Well, I put Dustin down for the seminary,
And he's not here yet, so we'll
reserve
find
fund.
him.
I put John down for the contracts,
Yeah.
the contracts. I thought you might do the operating budget.
Thanks.
I thought
Well,
Wendy,
that's gonna be,
the moderator does the budget one? Okay. I thought Wendy would do the technology revolving fund, and Corey would do the facility revolving fund.
but wait, do they want to do it?
Well, that, I just, again, suggestions that I wrote while we were going over them. Oh, Wendy was very passionate about the technology fund, I thought she might want to
Like
speak to it.
Corey wants to do it.
Okay, well, then we'll have Corey do that.
Just right.
Makes sense. I'll do 2.
Well, no, I think.
I don't think
the
1, 2, and
moderator's
3
gonna-
have to
The
do those,
the
right?
moderator does.
All right. So John can do 4. Corey, you don't want to do 5?
No.
I'll do 5. Dustin can do 6. Wendy or Corey can do 7?
I'll just do cartwheels.
Come on, Corey, do 7.
Yeah.
You understand it better than me.
Jane, you don't have that?
It's okay.
Okay. Unless you want five, I can more than.
Dustin's doing
Seminary, yeah.
Dustin's doing 6, Corey's doing 7. And
Don't
I'll
forget
do
when we're
5.
up there,
And
and
John
like,
will do
oh,
4.
who did this?
I'm gonna take this with me.
Well, he always turns to the people and says, who's going to speak to the article, and that's when you, but he's already, it's actually gonna be Ellie.
It's gonna be Ellen.
Alan,
And she'll be given a cheat sheet, right, I think,
Yes.
that has the script on it. Okay. So you need a signature page for the warrant?
Well, you said you weren't gonna go return to the office and sign, right?
Oh, we can't sign it tonight.
Will we be able, it will be available Friday? Please sign.
It will be a bit, as long as we have the information, we know the information.
On the budget
We
committee.
will know. Yes. Yes.
I can go over and I don't.
I guess so. That's right.
Boards. What's that? Yes.
I guess if we have it printed out, then all.
Agenda items for next regular meeting, which will be the February 4th, so that'll be the open session.
Okay.
Agenda items for next regular, that's the next board meeting is the 4th, right?
Will we meet beforehand at all, by chance, Jen? At all?
No,
Like even the day of?
I'm sorry?
Will we meet at all during the day of, like pre-delivery?
No, we have a post-deliv usually. I mean, I'm not opposed, we can if people, makes it a crunch for some folks to get here. Sense of the Senate on that, do we want to meet beforehand? Before we walk out there on the Cleveland?
We might want to get our meetings around 6:30 or so, but I don't know that we necessarily have to have any type of full-fledged meeting prior to just, go over who's going to speak to the warrants and whatnot, get set up. So plan on being there around 6:30.
6:30?
Or thereof. Yeah.
Is that agreeable to everybody?
When is the survey, end for the Cleveland?
Whatever.
Is there a
I don't
deadline?
know if there was a deadline put in the email. I haven't been involved in it, so.
When do we go over that? What meeting?
Before the vote, before the board changes. So it'd be the,
So I'm just putting in a request that we get the results ahead of time. I don't want to read them rushed in a meeting like last year. I don't like that.
I
think
thought
it
we
comes
ended
out-
at the end of June, at the end of January, I thought. I thought we had it December and January
Okay, I'm
last
just-
year, I
just-
thought.
Requesting
so
that we
we
get
would-
them ahead of time.
so our
I
first,
can absorb them.
our first board meeting would be March 4th. And the vote is the following Tuesday. So March 4th would be the latest that we would want to look at that evaluation.
Look at it in February.
And in likelihood, we would have it
The second meeting in February.
the second meeting in February.
And so between the deliberative and the second meeting, if you could, well, what Wendy's requesting is that you could get that to us before that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Who did it first?
Donna, I think, is
Donna, okay, all right, and then she, all right. and then- Just to say, I couldn't open it from Katie said, but I could open it from the link on the SAU webpage. Don't know why.
It should be closing soon.
I want to say last year it closed, the last day was January 31st.
I think so.
Yeah, that sounds familiar to me. I just,
Um,
every time I go to do it, some
Public comment?
Again, Bart Noyes, Kingston. First, I'm pleased to see that the board is bringing forth on the warrant some adjustments and some additions to the financial planning tools that the district has at its disposal to plan for the expenditure of funds, public funds for various purposes. We had a number of tools that over the past that have seemed to have worked well. And I think these are two good additions, to that kit bag, so I'm pleased to see that and certainly support it. With respect to the concern that was raised about the Newton polling place, I think the board needs to decide whether it's serious about this or not. If it's serious, and I would be, as an individual who knows the town hall in Newton and Route 108 going by it, I would be concerned that someone should speak with the police chief and see if he shares that concern. I think if that's the case, and even if it isn't the case, and the board still has that concern, there should be a formal vote taken on a motion concerning that, and that vote should then be communicated to the selectmen of Newton. I think that it should be based on RSA 658:9-A, which is titled Preparation of Polling Places, and for the most part looks at accessibility issues. And I would, if the board wishes to take this to a conclusion, then that letter would be copied to the Secretary of State. I'm not presuming that the board would wish to do that, but it's frustrating when you have issues like this that to some people at least seem to be common sense, which hang on and don't get resolved year after year after year. And sometimes it's worth maybe stubbing a few toes or something to resolve them one way or the other. And that you would need to do that, I think, by your next meeting, to have that motion in order to give time for the various bodies to respond. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Yes.
Thank you. I have a couple more comments. One is in regard to the ad hoc committee studying the seminary campus. I was wondering when a report would be made to the public as to the results of the study. I believe the committee was formed about 6 months ago, and there's not been a report from that committee for at least the past 3 meetings. So I'm wondering what the status of that is. Secondly, at the December 17th meeting, a board member commented on the WMUR report on the top 50 schools in New Hampshire and asked if that would be something that the board would discuss. The minutes reflect the response was yes, and that has not yet been discussed at a subsequent board meeting, and I was wondering if that would indeed be discussed at a future meeting. Which leads into my third question in regards to the goal of the school district to be one of the top 10% districts of the state. This is a goal that was established at least 4 years ago, possibly 5 years ago. And I was wondering where we are now in 2015. Are we in the top 10%? Are we close? Are we in the top 30%? Are we in the bottom 30%? Reports are made on some of the indicators that were used to justify this goal, such as state testing. Reports are given at least annually on the district's performance on the state testing.
but we never really get a full report as to where we are in the language of that goal, which is to be, to strive to be in the top 10%. And about once a year, I bring this up, and I'm sorry to sound like a broken record, but to me, a goal to strive to be in a certain place is not a goal. It's your job to educate the students of the district, and I would assume that striving is part of that. But the goal to strive to be doesn't say we'll ever be there. Every year we can keep striving. When do we get there? And where are we now? And in regards to the NWEA testing, I believe, and I may be mistaken, but I thought that we were going to change to a new, similar kind of a test. And I believe it was in this year's budget, but I was wondering how that new test compares to the NWEA. And once we get that new test, will our NWEA results, will we be able to relate that to the results that we get from this new test? Are they comparable, or are we going to be looking at apples and oranges with those results? And how do we gain the continuity if they're not similar enough? And finally, in regards to the conversation tonight about resignation from the board, it brought to mind a resignation from the board last year. I looked back at the meetings, the minutes of the meetings, school board meetings, and the last time Ms. King's name appeared on board members in attendance was in November. I looked at subsequent meeting minutes. I did not see anywhere that it was announced in public at a school board meeting that she had resigned. Now, I've pretty much come to every board meeting. I was very surprised that it was never announced at a board meeting that one of the members had resigned. And I kind of found out through the grapevine because I was wondering why she wasn't here. So I think that what was addressed tonight is certainly something that the board needs to reflect on. Being a board member, I was one once. I took it very seriously. With a budget of $34 million, I think the public deserves to have representation on this board and the appropriate number of people on this board for voting purposes. And that if board members are not present, the board should act to, or at least consider appointing someone to take that seat, or letting the public know that there is a seat available. There might be someone who would want to fill that seat. Thank you.
Thank you. School board comment?
To answer the question about the seminary committee, we haven't met in a few months. We've been waiting for a report from I can't remember exactly the name of it. We're waiting for a report, and we're meeting next on the 29th, Wednesday the 28th. So I would assume that at the next meeting we would have something to share.
Announcements. The Sanborn Regional School Board meeting on the next Sanborn Regional School Board meeting is on Wednesday, February 4th, in the session in the auditorium at the high school in Kingston. The Budget Committee meeting will be held Thursday, January 22nd, 2:15 at 7 in room 137. The filing period for positions on the Sanborn Regional School Board and the Sanborn Regional Budget Committee and the District Moderator will open on Wednesday, January 21st and end on Friday, January 30th at 5 p.m. The candidate filing forms may be obtained at the SAU office from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. The school district clerk will be available on last day to file from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. at the SMU office, which is now located at the Sanborn Regional High School, 17 Danville Road, Kingston. First deliberative session of the annual school district meeting will be held on Wednesday, February 4th at 7 at the Sanborn Regional High School Auditorium, 17 Danville Road, Kingston. The second voting session of the annual school district meeting will be held on Tuesday, March 10th, 2015, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the Swayze Gymnasium, Sanborn Seminary campus for Kingston voters, and in a Newton location to be determined for Newton voters. Could I have a motion, please, for non-public?
I'll make a motion that we go into non-public under RSA 91-8, colon 3, Roman numeral 2, E.
Second?
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Can I vote?